Welcome back to the channel where we remember the women who once lit up the screen, the stage, and the hearts of millions. In this video, we take a deeply emotional look at the lives and heartbreaking endings of American female child stars, young girls who rose to fame too early, carried the weight of the spotlight, and were gone far too soon. Behind the smiles, applause, and childhood charm were real human stories, some full of quiet pain, others marked by sudden tragedy. These were daughters, little sisters, and bright stars who left lasting impressions even in their short time. Their stories remind us just how fragile life can be, especially when fame finds someone before they've had the chance to grow up. Let's honor their memories, their struggles, and the innocence that was lost along the way. Today, we remember Anissa Jones, a young American actress who became famous as a child star and then tragically passed away far too soon at just 18 years old. Best known for playing Buffy Davis on the popular TV show Family Affair, Anissa captured hearts across America with her innocent charm and sweet personality on screen. But behind the fame and smiles was a young girl who never got the chance to grow up in peace. On August 28, 1976, Anissa was found dead in a bedroom after a party in Oceanside, California. Her death was ruled an accidental drug overdose, but the reality was heartbreaking. She had taken a deadly mix of cocaine, PCP, Quaaludes, and Seconal. The San Diego County coroner described her overdose as one of the most severe the county had ever seen. An envelope found beside her body linked one of the drugs to a doctor named Don Carlos Machos, who was later arrested for prescribing large quantities of drugs, including to minors like Anissa, in exchange for cash. Her final hours were spent in a house full of other teenagers and young adults, and while everyone else woke up, she never did. Just a few years before this, Anissa had been one of the most recognizable faces on television. She was born in West Lafayette, Indiana, in 1958, and her family moved to California when she was young. Her parents divorced when she was just a child, and soon after, she began acting. At the age of 8, she was cast as Buffy in Family Affair, where she played a sweet little girl living with her siblings and their bachelor uncle after their parents died. The show ran for 5 years and made her a household name, but when it ended in 1971, so did her acting career. She tried to find more work, but was constantly rejected, and by the time she was 12, Hollywood had completely forgotten her. That rejection hurt deeply, and Anissa began to drift. She still lived in California, had a boyfriend, and tried to live a normal life, but she was clearly struggling inside. She'd once said she was glad not to have been cast in The Exorcist because people would just think Buffy was possessed. A sad, quiet comment that showed how trapped she felt by her childhood fame. Her short life was filled with bright lights at first, but those lights faded fast, leaving behind a teenager with no direction, too much pain, and easy access to drugs. Her ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean after a small, private funeral. Not long after, her brother Paul also died of a drug overdose. There's something especially heartbreaking about child stars like Anissa, kids who were loved by millions but forgotten when the camera stopped rolling. She didn't just die from drugs, she died from a system that used her, discarded her, and never helped her heal. Even today, fans remember her as Buffy, the sweet little girl with the Mrs. Beasley doll. But behind those eyes was a lonely young woman who needed love, not fame. Ashley Aston Moore, a young actress whose light burned brightly in childhood, but was tragically gone far too soon. Ashley, born Ashley McMillan in 1981 and raised in Vancouver by her devoted mother, was just 26 when she passed away in December 2007 under heartbreaking circumstances. While some early reports claimed her death was due to an accidental heroin overdose, it was later revealed that complications from pneumonia and bronchitis ultimately took her life. In her final days, Ashley had quietly withdrawn from the spotlight, staying in her hometown, far from the glitz of Hollywood, where she once showed so much promise. It's believed that behind the scenes, she was struggling with her health and the emotional weight of a life that had seen both early fame and deep personal battles. Ashley's journey began when she was just 6 years old, encouraged by a school teacher who noticed her dramatic spark. Her first job was dressing up in a chicken costume for a commercial. but she quickly moved into bigger roles, including the popular Canadian show The Odyssey, where she played dual characters and won a YTV Achievement Award. She became widely recognized in 1995 for her unforgettable role as young Chrissy in Now and Then, where she shared the screen with stars like Demi Moore, Thora Birch, and Rosie O'Donnell. To play Chrissy, Ashley was asked to gain 20 pounds at just 12 years old, a request that left her with deep, lasting self-image issues. Her character was often the target of cruel jokes in the film, and though it was just acting, the impact on her young heart was very real. That role, while iconic, marked the start of a complex relationship with her body and her place in the world. After a few more roles, including Gold Diggers, The Secret of Bear Mountain, and Touched by an Angel, she quietly stepped away from acting after 1997, choosing to stay close to her family in British Columbia. The fame that once brought her recognition eventually faded, but the emotional toll of childhood stardom never quite left her. Ashley's passing came as a shock to many who remembered her as the sweet, wide-eyed girl from Now and Then. She had once dreamed of a long career, supported by a mother who tutored her at home and encouraged her dreams. But life didn't unfold that way. Instead, Ashley's story became one of quiet pain behind a smile, a gifted girl who captured hearts on screen but struggled with the heavy weight of expectations off-screen. Her death is a painful reminder of how fame at a young age can leave deep scars. She may be gone, but Ashley Aston Moore's memory lives on through her films, her fans, and the gentle, vulnerable truth she brought to every role she played. Bridget Anderson, a brilliant young actress whose life was filled with promise but ended far too soon in heartbreak. Bridget was just 21 years old when she tragically passed away on May 18, 1997, in Hollywood, California, from an accidental overdose of heroin and alcohol. In her final days, she was struggling hard to stay clean, working at a health food store, and trying to distance herself from friends who were still deep into drug use. Her roommate later said she was doing her best to recover, but addiction had its grip on her. Sometime during the week before her death, Bridget overdosed while a friend was present, and though help was called and she was rushed to Queen of Angels Hospital, it was too late. She was placed on life support but never woke up, and days later, her family made the painful decision to let her go. Her death was ruled accidental, and it devastated those who had once seen her light up screens with joy and innocence. Bridget's story began in Inglewood, California, born on July 11, 1975, and raised in Malibu. Even as a toddler, she showed signs of genius, reading books by Ernest Hemingway by age 6 and speaking with maturity beyond her years. She once kissed her fingers and touched digital clocks whenever they read 7-Eleven, calling it her lucky time. Her acting journey began when she declared to her father at 2 years old, "I'm an actress, you know." And by age 7, she had captured hearts as Savannah in the 1982 movie Savannah Smiles, a role that would define her legacy. That same year, she portrayed a young Mae West and soon became a familiar face on television, starring in shows like Remington Steele, Family Ties, and The Mississippi. She earned multiple Youth in Film Award nominations and had the kind of spark directors dream of. She picked up tap dancing by watching Gene Kelly and learned sign language for a film role. She was that dedicated. But as childhood faded, so did the roles. Her teen years were quieter, marked by a growing distance from her family and increasing struggles with drugs. The fame and pressure that came with being a child star likely played a part in her spiral. By the time she died, she was largely out of the spotlight, though still remembered by fans who adored her innocent charm. Her ashes were scattered at Zuma Beach, not far from where she grew up, and her name still brings a soft ache to those who remember the little girl who once wanted nothing more than to make people smile. Bridget Anderson's life was short, but her story remains a haunting reminder of the pain that often hides behind fame, and the fragile beauty of a young life lost too soon. Dana Plato, a once bright American television star whose life ended in heartbreak and loneliness. Dana, best known for playing Kimberly Drummond on the hit sitcom Different Strokes, passed away on May 8, 1999, at just 34 years old from a lethal mix of prescription drugs, hydrocodone and carisoprodol, inside a Winnebago motorhome parked outside her fiance's mother's home in Moore, Oklahoma. What seemed at first like a tragic accident was later ruled a suicide, a final chapter in a life filled with silent pain, addiction, and public struggle. Just one day earlier, Dana had appeared on The Howard Stern Show, where she was taunted by callers about her past, her sobriety, and her fading career. She sounded defensive, broken, and desperate to prove that she was clean. She even offered to take a drug test on air. Behind the words was someone barely holding on. That night, she told her fans she wasn't feeling well and took some painkillers for her recent wisdom tooth surgery. She laid down in the RV and never woke up. Dana had battled addiction and personal demons for years. She was arrested in 1991 for robbing a video store with a pellet gun and again in 1992 for forging a Valium prescription. Each time, she was humiliated in the press, labeled as a fallen child star instead of someone clearly crying out for help. Born Dana Michelle Strain on November 7, 1964, in California, she was adopted as a baby and raised in the San Fernando Valley. Her childhood was strict and isolated. Her mother kept her in what Dana once called a plastic bubble, trying to shield her from the world, but unknowingly leaving her unprepared for real life. By age 7, Dana had appeared in over 100 commercials, and at 13, she was offered a choice: pursue Olympic figure skating or take the role of Kimberly Drummond. She chose acting, and fame followed fast. Different strokes made her a teen idol, but behind the scenes, fame came with heavy pressure, and she began using drugs and alcohol at a young age. When she became pregnant in 1984, the show dropped her. That same year, she married rocker Lanny Lambert and had a son, Tyler, but the happiness didn't last. Her mother died in 1988. Her marriage ended, and she lost custody of her son. Then her financial advisor stole nearly all of her money and disappeared. The years that followed were filled with low-budget films, failed comebacks, drug struggles, and heartbreak. At one point, she worked as a dry cleaning cashier to survive. She tried everything to start over, posing in Playboy, appearing in video games, even moving into an RV with her fiance. But her demons never left. Dana Plato died chasing hope, longing for a second chance that never came. And heartbreak followed her even in death. Her only child, Tyler, died by suicide in 2010 at age 25, unable to escape the weight of losing his mother. Dana's life was a story of childhood fame, public downfall, and quiet suffering. She was more than a headline. She was a woman who needed help, who wanted to be loved, and who was failed by those around her. Today, we don't just remember her for her role on TV, but for the real person behind the camera, one who shined bright for a moment and left this world far too soon. Dominique Dunne, a young and rising American actress whose life was stolen far too soon in one of the most heartbreaking tragedies Hollywood has ever seen. At just 22 years old, Dominique had already captured attention with her role as Dana Freeling in the hit horror movie Poltergeist, and was on the edge of what should have been a bright, long career. But on October 30, 1982, she was attacked outside her West Hollywood home by her ex-boyfriend, John Sweeney, a chef she had broken up with after months of escalating abuse. That night, Sweeney showed up uninvited while Dominique was rehearsing lines with a friend. She stepped outside to talk to him, and minutes later, she was being strangled in her own driveway. Her friend called the police as it happened, but it was too late. Dominique was already unconscious. She never woke up. After 5 days in a coma, on November 4th, her parents made the devastating decision to take her off life support. The official cause of death was brain death from lack of oxygen. Her killer confessed at the scene and even told police he couldn't believe what he had done. But instead of a life sentence, he served less than 3 years behind bars. The injustice of her death haunted her family and shook the public. Dominique had been born in Santa Monica in 1959 to a well-known Hollywood family. Her father was the writer and producer Dominic Dunne. Her brother Griffin became an actor, and her uncle was the novelist John Gregory Dunne. She was raised around creativity and talent, studied acting seriously, and had just begun landing meaningful roles in television and film. She appeared in shows like Family, Lou Grant, and Breaking Away before landing her breakout role in Poltergeist. Her career was just starting. She was even filming the miniseries V when she was killed, and that show later aired with a dedication in her honor. What makes Dominique's death even harder to accept is that she tried to leave the abusive relationship. She had moved out, warned her mother about Sweeney, and had endured violent incidents in the weeks leading up to the attack. She showed courage in walking away, but in the end, it wasn't enough to protect her. After her death, her parents and brothers kept her memory alive through activism and writing. Her mother helped found Justice for homicide victims, and her father became a respected crime journalist, using Dominique's story to shed light on the failures of the legal system. Even decades later, the pain of her loss is felt deeply by those who loved her and by audiences who remember her brief but powerful presence on screen. Dominique Dunne wasn't just an actress. She was a daughter, a sister, and a victim of something no one should ever have to go through. Her story is a painful reminder of how dangerous domestic violence can be, and how fragile life is, even for someone who seemed to have it all ahead of her. Heather O'Rourke, the sweet-faced American child actress whose bright future was taken far too soon in one of the saddest tragedies in Hollywood. Heather was just 12 years old when she died suddenly on February 1, 1988, from congenital intestinal stenosis complicated by septic shock, a condition no one even knew she had until it was too late. Her death stunned the world because she had looked healthy, happy, and full of life until the very end. It all started in early 1987 when Heather began to experience stomach issues and was diagnosed with Crohn's disease after becoming ill from contaminated well water. She quietly endured painful treatments and took cortisone injections that caused her face to swell. Yet she never once let it interfere with her work or spirit, continuing to film Poltergeist 3 without a single complaint. But her body was hiding something far more serious. On the morning of February 1st, she collapsed at home after struggling to eat breakfast, her lips blue and hands cold. Her mother rushed to call for help, and Heather, still trying to stay strong, told the paramedics she was really okay and worried more about missing school than her own health. But in the ambulance, her heart stopped. Doctors restarted it, performed emergency surgery to fix a blockage in her intestines. But tragically, she went into cardiac arrest again in recovery, and this time they couldn't bring her back. The entire medical team fought for over half an hour, but she was pronounced dead that afternoon, leaving her family, friends, and fans heartbroken. Heather had become famous almost overnight after being discovered by Steven Spielberg at just 5 years old, when he spotted her eating lunch at MGM Studios and cast her as Carol Ann in the horror film Poltergeist. Her iconic line, "They're here," became part of pop culture history, and she quickly became one of the most recognizable child stars of the 1980s. She lit up the screen with her wide eyes, blonde hair, and natural innocence, returning for 2 more Poltergeist films and appearing in hit shows like Happy Days, Webster, and Chips. Despite all the fame, Heather stayed grounded, a 5th grade class president who loved Disneyland and her family. Her sudden death not only devastated fans, but also added to the chilling reputation of the so-called Poltergeist curse, as hers was one of several eerie deaths linked to the movie's cast. But beyond the rumors and myths, Heather's story is about a little girl who gave so much joy in such a short time, who worked hard, stayed kind, and smiled through pain no child should ever have to bear. Her passing wasn't just a loss to Hollywood. It was a loss to everyone who saw in her a spark of magic, and a reminder of how fragile life can be, even for someone so young and full of promise. Judith Barcy, a 10-year-old American child actress whose short life and heartbreaking death still shake anyone who hears her story. Judith had a bright future, a voice millions recognized, and a spirit that lit up every room she walked into. But none of that was enough to protect her from the danger that lived inside her own home. On July 27, 1988, Judith was shot to death in her bed by her father, Joseph Barcy, who also murdered her mother, Maria, before setting their bodies on fire and killing himself in the garage. Judith had spent her final months living in constant fear. Her father was a deeply troubled man, a violent alcoholic who threatened to kill them both for years. Even as her acting career soared, with major roles like Ducky in The Land Before Time and Anne Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven, Judith's home life was filled with terror. She had started showing signs of emotional trauma, pulling out her eyelashes and whispering to friends that she was afraid to go home because she knew her dad wanted to kill her mother. Her mom had tried to get help, even rented an apartment as a way out, but fear and hope that things might get better kept her from leaving for good. That hesitation cost both of them their lives. Judith was born on June 6, 1978, in Los Angeles to Hungarian immigrant parents who had each escaped difficult lives in search of something better. From the age of 5, Maria encouraged Judith's acting talents, and she quickly became one of the most successful child stars in Hollywood, appearing in over 70 commercials and several TV shows and movies. Directors praised her as a natural talent far beyond her years. Despite her fame and the income it brought her family, Judith remained a little girl who loved animals and dreamed of doing more films. Behind the scenes, though, she was suffering in silence. Her father's jealousy over her success and his own life's failures boiled into something deadly. Even a therapist had reported severe abuse to Child Protective Services, but the system failed her. And just weeks after her emotional breakdown, Judith was gone. Her final movie was released after her death, and those who worked with her said her voice brought so much life to her characters that it felt impossible to imagine she was really gone. Fans later raised money to buy her a proper gravestone, and it features her most famous line, "Yap. Yap, yap," a sweet, simple reminder of the little girl behind the animated voice. But no words, not even in a movie, can undo the pain of what happened to her. Judith Barcy was not just a child actress. She was a daughter, a victim of abuse, and a name that should never be forgotten, not just because of how talented she was, but because of how tragically her life was stolen by the very person who was supposed to protect her. Michelle Thomas, a young American actress whose life ended far too soon, leaving behind a legacy of warmth, talent, and heartbreak. Michelle, best known for playing the sweet and lovable Myra Monkhouse on Family Matters, the sensitive Justine Phillips on The Cosby Show, and the aspiring singer Callie Rogers on The Young and the Restless, died on December 23, 1998, at just 30 years old after a devastating battle with a rare and aggressive form of cancer called desmoplastic small round cell tumor. It was in August 1997 when Michelle was first diagnosed. Even though she lived an extremely healthy life, she was a vegetarian, never drank or smoked, and took great care of herself. Still, cancer doesn't care who you are. In early 1998, she had surgery to remove a lemon-sized tumor and tried to carry on with her acting career, even joining The Young and the Restless. But in October of that same year, her health took a serious turn when another growth ruptured inside her, requiring emergency surgery. Michelle's body was fragile and didn't react well to medication. Even small sedatives would put her to sleep for days. After being discharged from the hospital, she went home to spend Thanksgiving with her family in Weehawken, New Jersey. She was surrounded by love, but her condition kept worsening. On December 23rd, just 2 days before Christmas, she passed away at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, with her former boyfriend and close friend Malcolm Jamal Warner by her side. It was a quiet goodbye for someone who had lit up so many screens. Michelle had been a performer almost her whole life. She was born in Brookline, Massachusetts, on September 23, 1968, to Finjwar Thomas, a stage actress, and Dennis D.T. Thomas, a founding member of Kool and the Gang. Her childhood was filled with music, acting, and theater, often attending rehearsals with her mother and learning the craft from her. She won the title of Miss Talented Teen International at 15, and from there her journey as a rising star began. Through the late 80s and 90s, she appeared in commercials, TV shows, music videos, and even on stage, always playing roles that made people feel something, whether it was laughter, love, or sympathy. Her time as Myra on Family Matters made her unforgettable to millions of viewers. And just before her illness worsened, she had even been nominated for an NAACP Image Award for her work on The Young and the Restless. But behind the smiles and the bright career, Michelle was quietly fighting a disease that took everything from her in less than 2 years. She was buried in New Jersey after a Muslim funeral service, as per her wishes. Today, we don't just remember an actress, we remember a daughter, a friend, a joyful soul, and a woman who gave everything she had to her work and her loved ones, even while knowing her time was short. Her death was not just a medical loss. It was an emotional one for anyone who ever saw her light up a screen. Dana Hill, the American actress whose sweet, childlike voice and powerful performances touched millions, but whose life was painfully short. Dana was only 32 when she passed away on July 15, 1996, after slipping into a diabetic coma in May and then suffering a paralytic stroke in June. Her body had grown weaker over the years due to complications from type 1 diabetes, a disease she was diagnosed with as a child after collapsing during a race. The final months of her life were heartbreaking. Her kidneys were failing. She was in and out of the hospital, and in her last weeks, she could only communicate by blinking. Her mother later said that when Dana finally passed, it felt like her soul had been freed from a broken body that had held her back for so long. Born Dana Lynn gets in Los Angeles on May 6, 1964. Dana had dreams of becoming an athlete before diabetes stole that future from her. But she didn't give up. She turned to acting instead, using her mother's maiden name to make her own name in the industry. Her illness stunted her growth, giving her a youthful look and voice that helped her play children well into adulthood. She became famous in the early 80s with heartbreaking roles like the 12-year-old victim in Fallen Angel, which won her a Young Artist Award. She starred in Shoot the Moon, Cross Creek, and took on the role of Audrey in National Lampoon's European Vacation. But as her health declined, Dana focused more on voice acting, leaving behind a legacy in beloved shows like Goof Troop, where she voiced Max Goof, Duckman, Tom and Jerry, the movie Darkwing Duck, and many others. Her voice became part of childhood for an entire generation. Despite her illness, Dana never stopped working, never stopped trying, and never let the world see how much she was suffering. Her ability to bring young characters to life came from a place of deep pain and strength. In a life full of battles, she gave everything she had to her craft, even when her body was slowly giving out. Her death wasn't just the loss of a talented actress. It was the end of a life that had fought hard and loved fiercely through every obstacle. Dana Hill's story is a reminder of how fragile life can be, and how someone so full of life on screen can be hurting so deeply behind it. She will never be forgotten.